Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Bliss 44. This is a new tier 8 premium gunboat destroyer coming to the game, and it's AP only, as you can see here. No smokes, but an incredible engine boost and a 5-kilometer hydro. This ship actually performed pretty well. It's very, very difficult to play though. That is the one thing with it. This is a very, very hard destroyer to play, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. It's a quite powerful ship that is going to be available for Admiral Pack or, of course, gambling. Gotta be gambling these days too, but fortunately there is a direct purchase option. Unfortunately, that direct purchase option comes with a bunch of extra stuff in that Admiral Pack that you really don't need, that simply is there to inflate the cost. Wargaming, if you're listening to me at all, please just give us a regular purchase price back for these ships. It's really, really frustrating to have such an expensive ship come to the game for those that are interested in it. $85 US is not cheap. That is very expensive. We're approaching the price of what AAA games would cost for a single tier 8 destroyer. Now that tier 8 DD does have some very powerful gimmicks. 5-kilometer hydro allows you to deal with a lot of enemy destroyers very, very easily. This ship has a best concealment of 6 kilometers. You're going to notice that I'm not always using that build. So there's no stealth hydro here, but it's pretty close. It's reasonable. And if we compare it to things like a Lo Yang, for example, which is also a tier 8 destroyer with a hydro, that one does get a smoke where we do not. That ship has a 5.5 kilometer hydro range with, I think it's a 5.8 kilometer detect. So a little better at that roll than we are. But 5-kilometer hydro is no joke, and you saw it there against that enemy Cossack, one of the better destroyers at tier 8. And when he's alone, when we catch him off guard, yes, we could easily win those 1v1s. The problem with this ship, though, and the reason I think it is so difficult to play, you don't have a heal and you don't have a smoke. So what do you do when you're spotted? What do you do against a carrier? There's no defensive fire here. What happens if a carrier just perma-spots you? What if you try to open up and you realize later, after opening up, that it was a bad play and you need to go dark? Well, there's no tools for you to go dark with a smoke, and there's no way for you to recover some of that lost HP when you make a mistake. This ship is incredibly punishing for those that don't know how to play open water gunboats. It is very, very hard to play, and because of that, I didn't have the best time playing Bliss. Looking back, I actually had some really incredible games, as you are about to see. But it was hard. You had to be on it the entire time. You had to constantly be analyzing the situation. There was no real relaxing with this ship, is what I'm trying to say. If you're in for a challenge, though, I think Bliss is incredibly powerful. At its best, this ship is one of the better destroyers at tier 8, especially as far as damage goes out of these guns. And the torps are usable too. That's the other thing. A lot of gunboat DDs do not have great torpedoes. Here, we basically have Olin torps with a 10-second worse reload. That is very, very good. The DPM, though, that's what matters with a gunboat DD, of course. AP only, a little sad, but 222,000 AP DPM puts it towards the top of all the tier 8 destroyers. And that AP is massively improved. You're going to notice here that we don't have a lot of bounces when we're firing at enemy ships, even if they are angling. That's because our ricochet angles are 60 to 75 degrees. Even Fenyang, which is another small caliber gunboat DD at your tier, has 60 to 68 degree pen angles and very similar AP DPM. That ship does have HE though, which is really, really useful when people are angling to you. AP only though, we have very powerful AP. This ship does have a fusing threshold of 12 millimeters and a fuse time of 0.01. So pretty standard fuse time for destroyer AP, but that fusing threshold is about half or around half what you would normally see out of AP on a destroyer. And that's going to mean you should get a lot of full pens. We still get overpens because of that fuse time, but the fusing threshold helps us a lot here. Now, I do make mistakes. Don't you worry. I'm not perfect in this game, and here's a great example of what I was talking about earlier. I don't have a smoke to go dark with. That Dalian, he has a smoke to go dark with, and now the Collingwood is spotting us. I should not have opened up here. This was purely a mistake, but it's a great example of how you can very quickly get into trouble with the Bliss 44, where almost every other destroyer in the game would have some utility to get out of this position. But unfortunately, we are going to go down. We have done a lot, though, to help our team win. Cap contesting, the ship is pretty good at here because of our gun power, and that does net us an E in this game. Although we do have relatively favorable matchmaking in that one, as Tier 8 is often pulled into Tier 10, and Tier 10 carrier double sub games. I'm not gonna go on and on about it. I realize I say that every video and then I talk about it for like 5 minutes. So this time I am legitimately going to limit it to simply this. A ship without defensive fire, a heal, or a smoke into these kinds of matches is not very fun. I did not enjoy myself this game. However, I still had a pretty good game. My damage here into this Fantastic, not great to start with, but once we get that aim down, the AP starts hitting quite well. We're still getting some overpens though, so it's not guaranteed full pens, but I want to point this out as a great example of another destroyer that has great speed and a really strong engine boost that is using its speed to dodge. And Bliss needs to do that as well. If you haven't played the French DDs, it's going to be very, very hard to play this one. But if you have, you're going to see some similarities here. Our speed here is actually 39 knots. We are much, much faster than almost everything at our tier. Fanta is at 42.7, Laterable 43, Kiev 42.5. Everything else, though, is the same speed as us or slower. And we have one of the best engine boosts in the entire game, nearly. There's some 30% engine boosts hanging around out there, but this one is a 25%. That is extremely powerful. That's going to boost our top speed by a lot, and also it's going to boost our acceleration. So for Bliss, you need to be playing with your acceleration to dodge. You saw how effective it was there for that enemy Fanta to use his acceleration to dodge my shells. It was difficult for me to get that lead down to start with. And eventually I got it, but you need to be slowing down and speeding up. Notice here, we're basically stopped trying to dodge these Yoshi salvos, as well as maybe it lands some ASWs here. But now the planes are coming in, and look at how quickly we're able to accelerate out of these planes, hopefully out of line of fire from this Yoshino as well. And that's really hard to learn. Dodging is really, really hard to learn. You need something that has a smoke or a heal to help you learn, because there's some forgiveness there. Here, there is no forgiveness for making mistakes. You are going to take a lot of damage, and you're going to die rather quickly with this ship. It's going to be difficult. It has the tools to survive. Our rudder shift isn't bad if we take rudder mod, but unfortunately, if we don't, it's a 4.5 second rudder, which is not great for tier 8 destroyers, which is why I was starting to take rudder mod in some of these games. Our turning radius, though, at 610 meters puts us as one of the better ships at tier 8 as far as destroyers go. Don't mind my aim here. I'm just trying to free look and hope for some shots in on that Yoshi, but mainly focusing on taking out this 4501. He's almost faster than us underwater. I think without our engine boost, he would be faster than us. So very fortunate that we managed to catch him. Unfortunately, though, once people understand what this ship is about, they're probably just going to bow onto you. And then suddenly your damage drops off a cliff. But 610 meter turning radius combined with the rudder mod, you're very difficult to hit. And this engine boost up, this ship is very, very maneuverable. If you're good at dodging incoming salvos, it's a very, very powerful ship because the DPM is there, barely, but it is there. And you can survive for quite a long time off of dodging alone. This ship used to have a heal in testing. And I don't want to always bring up in testing, but it does feel like this ship was intended as an open water gunboat where its heal would allow it to stay in some of these more difficult games, allowing it to have some of that forgiveness. We see that on the mainline European DDs, right? Like the Holland line, for example. They have no smokes, but they do have a heal to come back from. And Bliss doesn't, and I think that is a really, really big downside. These guns are very strong, and maybe that warrants no healing, but it's AP only guns, right? I think that's a downside enough to have this level of DPM reload damage output. AP is great when people are broadside like this Holland is right now, but as soon as he starts angling, we're going to start bouncing and actually missing quite a lot. Again, my aim was not perfect in these videos, but it's enough of a downside, I think, in my opinion, to have AP only. This Plasma is just going to bow into me, and I have no hope of winning this game, unfortunately, but it's a full up tier for us into really bad matchmaker, and I still managed to make it work with some decent damage. I had to play very passive, yes, I know. I didn't exactly help my team to win this one. Maybe I farmed damage too hard, but it can work. And I went into this thinking this was going to be a very bad ship because it lost that heal. Much like Eskimo lost its heal, and I wondered what was the point. This one I can see a little bit more of, simply because I started playing it with full 5th slot rudder mod, 4 slot prop mod. I almost played it a bit like a John the Ruthless Colbert build, if you know about that. And look at how quickly we're able to dodge some of these Bayard salvos. We can even look for the gaps in the shells and fit our ship in between them. That's how maneuverable we are. It's pretty good at it. It's hard to play though. Fortunately, these torpedoes do come in clutch. My best damage games, the torps played a key role. This match here actually will be my highest damage that I got while recording for this ship. And I want you to pay attention at how weak our AP can feel. This DPM is enough. But you're going to notice some of these salvos here, a lot of hits, not a lot of damage. You need those torpedoes to get you some damage in this ship. You can't just play it full gunboat. In my opinion, I think that's going to be missing out on a lot of the utility of this thing. Olin does not have the best torpedoes at its tier, certainly. Its DPM is quite low, but that's the unique feature, I suppose, of these pan-European destroyers, is that their reload is just so fast. The speed on these torpedoes is so fast, and they have really good range. So it's a lot easier to hit these torpedoes, I find that at least. And sure, maybe not the highest damage, but you're going to get some floods here. Unfortunately, no HE to take advantage of people damage controlling your floods. Lacking a little bit of that synergy, certainly. But to have those torpedoes, those same torpedoes with 10 seconds worse reload. It's an 80-second reload here on these torps. They do 10,700 damage. They go 12 kilometers, and they have a 76 knot base speed. They're solid torpedoes. They're not going to be dev striking very many ships, but it's really good damage, and I personally find them relatively easy to hit thanks to their speed, and that they come back relatively quickly too. It doesn't feel like you're missing out on a big opportunity or you're investing a lot into a torp launch where you otherwise would in, say, a Japanese destroyer, where it takes a long time to reload those, but if you hit them, they are going to nuke the enemy ship. But the guns are still going to be the key feature of this ship because that's where it does have the advantage. If you're playing for torps, if you're trying to play that role, you should just play the mainline pan-European destroyers. Especially because of the heal as well. I really missed the heal, man. I gotta say. In this one, I noticed the lack of pen actually on these AP shells as well. Something that happens a lot to especially battleships, which we are going to be farming, is that their superstructure saturates relatively quickly. And then they heal, the superstructure is less saturated, you get good damage there again. But if you can't pen the upper belt, suddenly all you have to aim at is the superstructure. At 10 kilometers, this ship has 54 millimeters of pen, and that's if the enemy ship is flat. Our shells are definitely not hitting at a very flat angle on the enemy ships at those ranges. So for a Vermont with an upper belt of 51, I believe, I was shattering a lot on these Vermonts when they were at longer ranges there. We could only pen him in the superstructure, and at that point, I just wish I had HE. Right? The whole point of having strong AP is that I can pen upper belts. That way I don't have to worry about the enemy ship's superstructure being saturated. I can get into an unsaturated belt armor that then nets me huge damage. That's why it feels like AP absolutely crushes people on the broadside with some of these gunboat DDs, where your HE starts to feel a little bit anemic, especially when you only go superstructure the entire time. Getting into a section of the ship that hasn't been saturated yet gets you that really, really nice damage. And for Bliss guns here, to have such poor pen, I mean, it's fine pen for the caliber of guns, okay? It's 102 millimeter guns, and that's relatively the same as Fenyang, which has 58 mil pen. Pretty similar, and that's the other ship with the improved pen angles, by the way, on the AP that I was comparing it to. Similar DPM as well. If you've played Fenyang, you probably know generally what you're getting into here. The shell velocity is a little bit worse than the Fenyang, but it's still workable. I found using range mod was a perfectly reasonable build. Full building for guns, lacking concealment, going a bit of a lighthouse build there. Well, that's more of a cruiser thing, I guess. Full guns, no conceal, maximum maneuverability and gun power netted me some pretty good matches as far as damage goes. You do lack the concealment, though, in those situations. 7.4 detect is not great. Getting it down to 6 means you can get into some of those gunboat engagements with DDs. But the problem becomes the turret angles. Yes. This is something I have failed to mention so far because this is my biggest problem with the Bliss and why it feels so uncomfortable to play. These turret angles are supposed to be 32 degrees going forward and 32 degrees going backwards. That sounds amazing for a gunboat DD with respectable DPM. Unfortunately, that's only at close range. And now, if you had to press me, I would say close range turret angles are more important than far range turret angles. But as you get out to distance, these turret angles start dropping off. Suddenly, after 6.5 kilometers, 6.3, 6.4 kilometers, you start to lose some degrees on your firing angles. It's really strange. It makes the ship very inconsistent feeling subconsciously. This is not something I actively noticed while playing the game. It was just subconsciously. I felt like something was off. And I wound that down to feeling like I wanted the heals back. Okay, I was complaining about no heal on this ship, wondering why that wasn't there. But the maneuverability can make up for that. It's just really inconsistent when you lose a degree or two of turret angle as you go out a kilometer and another kilometer, 7, 8, 9, 10 kilometers. Suddenly you're over 40-degree firing angles. And I found at maximum range, I had to give over 50 degrees of broadside. Now that is at 13.8 kilometers of range. I had to give over 50 degrees though to fire all of these turrets. That's not very comfortable. Fortunately, that's long range, so it matters a lot less. And that's why I haven't brought it up till now. If it was the other way and close range was 50 degrees, you better believe that would be the first thing I'm talking about. But it just felt not particularly comfortable. Those turret angles, the lack of heal still feels uncomfortable. The lack of smoke feels uncomfortable. And the lack of strong AA. If a carrier just decides to come over and hover you, your AA is very weak. This is not a ship like the mainline pan-European destroyers that has a defensive fire and just base really strong AA. Like a Holland can get away with flanking routes in games with carriers. Yes, the carrier can still strike you, but he's going to lose a lot of planes to do so. Not so with Bliss, okay? Yeah, it's tier 8 versus tier 10 there, I know. But tier 8 versus tier 8 carrier here, and we're not doing a whole lot, man. Unfortunately, it's an uncomfortable ship to play. It's a hard ship to play. But look at this damage here. As soon as we get the broadside of this Lexington, notice we're penning his upper belt, not his superstructure. Doesn't saturate nearly as quickly, and that's where we get those big salvos. When we were firing at the Vermont and we had to hit the saturated superstructure, suddenly we were doing way, way less damage. I found that very interesting. One of the main reasons I think HE is so important, even if you should be using AP, is that you can get those fires into those saturated sections and still do very good, consistent damage, especially into up tiers. Fires really are the great equalizer. As for the builds on this ship, I think there's a few different ways you can go with it. The full concealment build will definitely be very good. If you're not used to playing a gunboat with not great concealment, I think running conceal is perfectly reasonable. 6 kilometer detect is still not amazing at your tier. Certainly a lot of the destroyers will have like 5.8 kilometer detect is pretty common. So a little bit worse, but still close enough that, let's be honest, the lag in this game makes 6 kilometers versus 5.8 kilometers not matter that much. Come on, you know it's true. The game does not operate that quickly these days, does it? So a full detect like that allows you to be detecting people at the same time you get detected, and the guns will still have really good punching power. Fearless Brawler seems like an easy recommend since you're not going to be hiding in your smoke screens. I suppose then you don't have that extra DPM when you're behind islands, but still, Fearless Brawler is excellent, as is Adrenaline Rush. Notice here I'm actually dropping main battery and AA specialist. I couldn't fit it in here to this build. We need the HP. We simply just need the HP here. So I could not fit that in. We don't need super because we already have 4 engine boosts and 3 hydros. I found that was plenty for my games. But we can take extra heavy AP here because that's just a pure 7.5% buff to our damage. This is a 5% buff, so this is actually better for us, and it's cheaper, allowing me to get more consumable action time. This engine boost is very, very powerful and is often your lifeline, so getting the most out of it is quite important. The cooldown time is a little bit longer. It's not equal. You know, it's not one of those really fun engine boosts where it has equal uptime to reloading time. But still, it's good enough that you're often going to have it in the situations where you need it. The downside of this build is going to be your rudder shift time. Your turning radius is great. Your speed is very fast, especially with that engine boost up. You're quite maneuverable. But you're going to lack some rudder here. And that's where the build I landed on, the one that I enjoyed the most, was where I actually took rudder here, giving me 2.7 second rudder shift with a 610 turning radius. If I'm paying attention, good luck hitting me, man. Dispersion is enough to allow me to dodge shells, even if they aim correctly. Just a little gap is enough that you can fit this ship in. And then as for the build, I swapped over to a build like this one, going for range instead of concealment here. And that was usable. The 13.8 kilometers of range is usable on this ship, especially in up tiers. The shell velocity is not amazing, but I found it usable enough for me to hit at those ranges. Not reliably on small ships, but into battleships, larger cruisers, I could reasonably hit with it. Although I can see trying to fit the just full DPM build and trying that out as well. It's a tricky ship to play. And because of that, building it out is hard, I think. It's quite a hard ship to build out. I wish it had a heal still, man. I really do. I think the AP only is enough of a sacrifice for this ship to warrant the heal, but considering my games in it, I think I averaged over 100k in this ship. That's quite a bit better than most of the tier 8 destroyers. It's, again, small sample size, of course, but it's pretty good for me in a tier 8 DD. So the numbers say that I did perfectly fine in it. Perhaps I was overperforming even in it a little bit. So maybe it doesn't need that heal, but it's a hard one to play. It's a very, very difficult one to play. The reason, though, that you don't have good firing angles is actually these little, I don't know, blockers here, I guess. And you have that front and back. So it impacts you no matter which way you're going, forwards or kiting. And it impacts equally as far as I can tell. It's hard to see exactly what it is, but it felt like after 6.5 kilometers, I lost a degree or two every kilometer. And then finally getting around 50-degree firing angles to fire everything. Fortunately, these top turrets aren't impacted. You probably noticed throughout, it's 360-degree turrets on the whole thing. And your turret traverse is 10 seconds for 180 degrees, so it's very comfortable to use in that regard. But it's hard to just stay alive in this ship. To play aggressive and stay alive, I do not recommend you try to hydro people in smokes aggressively. I got very fortunate that Cossack was all alone. It's much like pushing submarines. Good in theory that a destroyer goes and pushes an enemy sub, but if you're doing that and that sub is kiting back to his teammates or is around his teammates, you're just going to die as a destroyer. The only time you can really push a sub is when he's all alone. I think the same thing is true for these smoke screens, and pushing a destroyer in smoke with the hydro gimmick is very hard to do otherwise. And like I said, you take a lot of damage otherwise. No French saturation here, and of course, no healing. So for me personally, $85 is a pretty easy skip. I know I'm fortunate enough to get access to these things to play them, so I know if I would enjoy it or not, or worth the cost. But $85 US, by the way, so it's like 120 Canadian. Yikes. That's not a great calculation to do. 120 Canadian. Ooh, that's not worth it to me, but maybe it is to you. Maybe this one is interesting to you. If you're thinking about this playstyle, try the Pan-European destroyers, the Holland line in particular. You get a heal. The guns are a little bit worse, but you get access to HE. The torps are better. Otherwise, you could look at the French gunboat line if you want to try the no smoke, no heal route and see if you can make it work. Then maybe this one is a good option for that. Those are still more forgiving, though, because they're even faster, more maneuverable, and also have that French saturation gimmick. But that's going to do it for the Bliss 44 here today. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.